grab some more chairs or something? Chairs.
That would be great. Yeah, just keep a watch.
We've got at least one outside.
Thank you, Mary, for getting some more chairs, but don't be gone too long. Well, welcome, everybody. This is perfect, Jack. I can sit on your lap. Welcome, everybody. My name is Clay Eels. I'm the Executive Director of the Southwest Seattle Historical Society, and I welcome you to this wonderful occasion today. Well, I'll turn it up a notch. How's that? Or can you come a little closer? Can you switch a seat with somebody?
I usually have to have the sound quite loud.
Well, how does this... Is this better?
I don't want to move. Maybe just watch my routine is something I should do.
We have room here. Why don't you switch?
Did you know there was a
That would be a good idea.
Oh, no, this is
Can you hear? Well, while we are getting the logistics worked out here,
She wants to hear it.
I might just put it back here.
Yeah. There's this one too.
you know, I have to say, my mentor in this regard is our founder, Elliot Cowden, who said, if you are ever in a situation where you're on the fence about whether to have a sound system or not, please do. And he was one of the big members of a group called SHHH, Self-Help for the Hard of Hearing. And the very first thing I would like you to know, before we start anything else here today, is that we are most fortunate to have Elliot's widow, Irma Cowden, who is 99 and a half, and she is right here in the corner. Could you please give her a round of applause? Irma, we're really honored that you're here for this, and her daughter too, Jenny Stimpson. This goes on and on through the generations, this historical society stuff. What we're doing today is, this is the second annual If These Walls Could Talk home tour. And last year, some of you were at the tour we had at what we called the centennial of His Honor's home, the 100-year anniversary of Greg and Sharon Nichols' home in the Admiral area. Here we are in the Gatewood area, and we are just so thrilled to have all of you here at this very special VIP situation. And it falls about half and half here. Half of you are guests who are invited to come to share in this program and enjoy it, and the other half are people who live here or have lived here and have stories to share. And that's one of the things that we really thought that this made it a special occasion for us to do this house, because how many houses can you go to and hear from the families who lived there through all of its existence? We're really thrilled about this. Not only is it a stunning house, but in everything we do, I think there is the stuff, and here's the stuff. The house is the stuff, but I really think it's the people. It's getting people together for common purpose, and this is just, like I said, this hour is going to go really fast. What I want to do is recognize some key people, and then we'll get the program going. First of all, we have three people who, without them, we could not have done this, and that is the owner of the home, her daughter, and the owner's niece. And I'm talking about Margaret Hayes, Mary Hayes, and Sarah Barton. Would you please put your hands together? They've done a lot of work. I also want to recognize somebody who's here representing the future. Next year, our home tour is going to be at the J.E. Daddy Stanley home. Daddy Stanley was the one who founded the Ye Olde Curiosity Shop, and he lived here in West Seattle in the Admiral area. And living in that house, owning that house for a number of years now, is Katie Wallam, and she's here to see what this is all about. So we'll try try to scare you away today.
It's very intimidating. This is a hard act to follow.
And, you know, there are so many, how many in here are members of our board? Would you please raise your hand? We have Dora Faye Hendricks, we have Peter Nelson, we have our president, Marcy Johnson, we have Carrie Korsgaard. I know Tia's, there you are, I didn't see your hand open. And would you please, they put up with me for a long time here. This is about the busiest month we've had. Would you please give our board a round of applause? And then there are, I mean, the board is the highest level of volunteers, but then you have volunteers who are really behind the scenes. I mean, we have so many today, I can't name them all, but you met them and you will meet them going through the house one-on-one. Please thank them for volunteering. There are two I need to really point out because, again, without them this would not have happened. One is Brad Chrisman, and she's back in the back, but she needs to come out. Bethany Green, please give a round of applause for her. Truly, I couldn't have done this without both of you. Thank you. There's a lot of respect and trust in this team, and it's been wonderful. Okay, let's get on to the stories. Oh, wait a minute. We had some music when we started. Where's Verona? Please give a round of applause to Verona Ryan. She will be continuing throughout the day. So Brad, help me out here. The first family. Mary, are you going to speak a little bit about the first family?
Yeah, I can absolutely do that.
Can I hand the mic to you, or would you like to come up?
Sure, I can. You can actually.
What?
Actually, my notes just happen to be right in the most inconvenient spot, right up
Okay.
Thank you.
We have 5 families represented here today. So the first one is the Harpers.
Yes.
And Mary Hayes is going to tell you a little bit about their experience. They were the first ones in this home. Here you go, Mary.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Hi everybody, I'm Mary. Nice to meet you all. I just want to also thank the other families and my family for coming. This is very special to me, and I'm very excited to see you all here. And it's a little overwhelming, but bear with me. Okay, so the house was built in 1910 by a man named Francis Harper. Frank, we like to call him Frank. He was born in England in 1859, and he was in the military. So the way that he ended up in Seattle was, first he was sent to Western Canada during the gold rush, and he was a high-ranking official there, and it was his job to settle the forts in kind of the wilds of Canada. And so as he was there, he had quite a reputation. I've got some pictures actually of him then. You can pass around if you want. This is Frank. He built this house. This is him with, This is him with some of his men, and he's the one with the most ornate kind of jacket you'll see there. Here's his obituary, which has some good information in it too. So during that time, he was in Canada, and his wife Pontine came out there, and they had their children. He was sent to the Boer War, and I just spoke with one of his great-grandsons the other day and found this little bit out that I hadn't known yet. But apparently, after he came back 3 years later, he, for some reason, only made it back as far as Montana, and then one of his sons went and got him. And that son had a job here with, I think it's the Pacific Coast Railroad, it says in the obituary, and that's what brought them to Seattle. So he worked with the ships. They lived on Queen Anne, and while he did that, he built this house. At the time, there was no other houses around here. So basically, we like to describe it as imagine this house in the middle of Lincoln Park, and that was how they lived. So it was him, his wife Pontine, and they had 6 children, 4 boys and 2 girls. Don, his son, at least 2 of his sons went into World War I. Cecil and Don. Cecil came back, and Don did not. Frank's did a little bit of research after Don was missing in action, and this is as much as he found. You can see his signature at the bottom there. All of this was shared with me from the Harper family, so I'm very indebted to them for their generosity. So they lived here until Frank died, as you'll see in the obituary here, unexpectedly in, I think it was 1924. And he then, his wife Pontine continued to live here and had the house herself. I also just learned that his son Jack moved back in, I don't know at what point, but moved back in with his wife and their kids. So they grew up here as similar things happened with other families later, that the house was so big that it just kind of made sense. So you might have seen that photo that Brad used in his article that had the Harpers in the front yard. And that was, that many of those family members were here. Let's see, what else do I know? Just a little tidbit about Frank's personality. His grandson, or his great-grandson, Jeff, found this in a text from showing the flag, the mounted police, and Canadian sovereignty in the North. It says, despite the best efforts of various officers commanding the police, discipline could not be kept as tight as it was in the Southern, as it was later to be kept farther north, where exceptions were fewer. Behavior was tolerated in the Yukon, which would have brought instant dismissal under other circumstances. A well-known case is that of Inspector Frank Harper, who was a veteran of nearly 20 years of service when he went to the Yukon in 1898. Pierre Burton quotes an old sourdough as saying, "I myself saw Captain Harper of the Northwest Mounted Police bet $100 that he could strip off naked, stand on his head in the center of the Monte Carlo Theater, and eat a pound of raw beefsteak off the floor." And he won the bet. So that's kind of as much as I know about Frank, but I think that that's a good bit to know. And yeah, his family then continued to live here. Pontine sold the house to the Clarks, who are here with us, in the early 40s. We believe, we have, at least maybe someone else has been able to scrounge this up, but we believe that it was rented during that time. Maybe she moved in with some of her families, and they just only moved down to Three Tree Point, just past Burien, so stayed close to West Seattle. So yeah, that's about what I have for the Harpers. Pass it on.
Thank you very much. Could you please give Mary a round of applause? And now we move to that famous photograph, now famous photograph of the Clarks. The Clark sisters, the two of you are two of the three in the photo, correct? Who would like to speak for a few minutes about your time? Wonderful. Would you like to come up here? I think this would be good. And just,
Hi, everybody.
you were singing earlier, right?
Right,
This house had a lot of music, didn't it?
Always.
Tell us about it. Tell us about it, Peg.
Let's see, we came to this house, and I think it was in the late or mid 1930s, actually, because my father was a concert accordionist and piano player and symphony cello. And we had been touring all over the United States, and we came to the Northwest, and my father liked it so well that he decided that when the tour was over, he was coming back here. So he did, and within a short time, they found this place, which actually, this was in the midst of the Depression, you know, and the house was a white elephant. You know, I don't think anybody wanted that big a responsibility, and I believe it had been rented because there was some evidence of lack of care, which I'm sure wouldn't have been there if the owners had been living in it. Anyway, so we came to live here. There were three sisters, myself, Peggy, Dorothy, my little sister, and Jean, my older sister, who is not here today, but we're all living it up. I loved, the house was full of music because my father played and he practiced, and of course he had jobs and he taught music also. But he used to play the piano, and I loved to sing. So I would come down and I would persuade him to play. And as long as he would play, I would sing. And I loved it. And what a wonderful welcome to the house to find that somebody was playing the piano here. Oh, I mean, it was like coming home. And for a number of us, this is home. I grew up here, did all sorts of crazy things like climbing out of that window. You and I climbed out of that window in the middle of the night one time with a little friend from over across the road. And I don't know if I want to tell this or not. But we were trying to haul her in. And we had the window open. We had hold of her. We were trying to pull her in. We finally realized that she was trying not to be hauled in. And do you remember? No, it wasn't you who did it. I went around to help boost her, and I discovered that she had wet. And had wet all the side of the house. So she was afraid to come in. Well, anyway, that was...
Great story.
This home just seemed barely big enough, you know. I mean, I loved to dance and sing. And my sister Jean and I used to make costumes for the children, and I think there's a picture upstairs with a little girl with wings on. That was a costume we made for a niece. We made all kinds of costumes and doll clothes. The room that is now called the Clark Room was actually my creative room, where I would do writing and sewing and all sorts of stuff like that. The room up here, which I think is now 2 rooms, was mine because it had 2 closets and a lot of space. And yeah?
You were talking about both the time when you were growing up and the time when you were married and had kids and we all came back here.
Right, right. Because we grew up here, but then we came back here again with our children, and we had various relatives who needed...
Just her.
Well, all right.
We lived here. They came to visit.
Do you want to correct me? This is one of my daughters, and her job in life is to correct me. My mother had grown up in England, she was poor. She always wanted to live in a big house, but as soon as she got into the big house, she started doing things like sanding the floors and doing everything by hand, you know, to get the house in shape. And the floors, now they're oak, or whatever. But back then they were fir, and when she'd get done sanding and varnishing, they would look like the back of my father's cello. And it just glowed, and those floors just glowed, but they were soft wood, and it was really hard to keep them going. And they replaced the old stairs with oak, too, up there. They've done some wonderful things, but also I really appreciate that they have kept the quality of the house. Like this, it looks just the way it did, you know, except for the beams being somewhat different, but it was beamed all around anyway. But we had the same wainscoting, the same plate rails, same windows, same French doors. Everything was the same and looks the same. I'm going to put a few pictures up in the Clark room, spread them out on the bed, so if anybody wants to see them, they can. It must be my turn. I'm Dorothy. Hold her right up to I'm Dorothy Clark Rasmussen. Is this better?
Yes.
And I wanted to tell about how the house was. It had a dirt floor in the back and rooms in the front down below. This is down the level down below. And Peggy and I used to have to put fuel for the furnace into the corner room down here. It was used as a bin. It was a bin for sawdust, and then later it was a bin for coal. And we had to pull it in to the windows with things like snow shovels.
Oh, wow.
Can you hear me? Am I doing this right? Yes. So that's the way it was then.
Wow, yeah.
And I don't know if we ever did anything about the dirt floor. I think somebody else must have corrected that and made all those changes. There was only one bath, there was 2 bathrooms, and they were on the top floor. And my mother did the laundry down in the basement in a tub that had a spinner. So it was an old thing, and it could have leaked. And so that was over the dirt part. And, well, she wanted a bathroom, and so she built one in the kitchen on this floor. And there was right isolated in the middle of the kitchen, on this wall. Plywood walls.
Wow.
And I don't remember whether it had any windows in it or not. The toilet was the essential part. Mama also used to do dry cleaning. What she did was she'd take gasoline down the basement, and pour it into the washing machine, and put the clothes in there, and the rest of us would leave the house. I don't think I did. I admired my mother. I had a dark room in one of the narrow rooms upstairs that my mother made for me. And she put in a sink, I think.
Yes.
But I don't know that I could, I learned how to do films in there anyway. It was very nice for her to fix it up for me. And then I did buy a big washer that I put in another place that would hold a lot of water and wash. Yes. So you're wanting this microphone back? Are there any questions?
We only have 5 hours here today, so. Thank you. Give a round of applause to Dorothy.
I'm Dorothy's son. Am I coming to the microphone?
Yes.
They didn't mention the goose. The central fact of living here was the goose. I believe the goose was purchased for Thanksgiving dinner, and it was deemed to be too friendly and not fat enough. And so I went on to be the Christmas dinner goose, except when Christmas came around, it was too daunting and not nearly friendly enough. And so the goose would patrol around out here, and we would come over from Paulsbo, and I would stay in the car. Mom and Dad would go back and forth between the house and the car a couple of times, and when they told me it was clear, then I would come over. And I understand that the meter reader for the electric meter had to be
And the garbage man.
and the garbage man had to be pulled down off the top of their car after the goose had been put away. Grandma could do anything she wanted with the goose. That was Lottie. She could do anything she wanted with the goose. Everyone else is in mortal fear of the goose. And so anyway, after the incident with the meter reader, he never came back until the goose died many years later. Then he read the meter, and then I guess the electric bill just about broke Grandma. So I had to interject that.
The garbage man, the goose, her name was Gita, except she turned out to be a gander. Anyway, the garbage man would load up and he would get out of here as fast as he could. And the goose would follow the truck, and then the truck would tear down Gatewood Road and the goose would go flying out.
Thank you. This is the Clark family, everybody. It's like a family reunion times 5. The Frosts. Who's going to be speaking? Come on up here, Jack. Jack has a name that is ungoogleable. In other words, you cannot find him.
Oh,
Because if you Google Jack Frost, you get something completely different.
that's right. It's my cover.
Here you go, Jack Frost.
Hello. Am I loud enough? Several of my family are here. My sister Janet is over here. My sister Jill. My partner Jim is here. And there's a couple of other, a nephew and a partner somewhere here too. They might be off somewhere. Anyway, we were here from 1965 to 1969, one of the shortest families here. We bought from the Clarks. And I was just about 7 years old or so when we moved here. We were a military family, and my dad had been in the service 20-some years, and this was actually our first home as civilians, even though I was one of the younger kids and already 7, so this was kind of our first place after we got out of the service. We came straight from Germany, and having been in Germany for several years, and arrived here. I was just thinking, listening to some of you, the Clarks, and information about the Harpers too, has answered some questions certainly about when we moved in here. We're the ones that tore the bathroom out of the kitchen and kind of gave my mom more kitchen space. We did hear the story about the goose, and there used to be an old stump house, which is like a tree house that's built on top of a stump that looked down over the ravine, down toward the street. So when you stepped into it from behind, just a step up, you suddenly were looking down as if you were in a tree house on the other side. But I heard that the goose had taken that over or something to that effect. It was a coal furnace when we moved in, so my dad, us boys, we shovel coal to keep the furnace going, and I think we converted it at some point to something else that was in here. Anyway, my folks, this was their first home. One thing I always remember, as I say, we were a military family. We moved a lot. We were only here 5 years and moved many other places since then. And we were our own best friends. We're all still together now, but we're up in Bellingham area. We were our own best friends because we moved so often. And I remember as a little boy, on Friday evenings, my dad, after he left the service, became a banker. And so he would arrive at home for the weekend on Friday evening. My mother would all be dressed up in 60s, probably more toward 50s attire, waiting for him at the front door with a martini when he would arrive home from work. And there used to be a separate room at the end of the kitchen there that had the fireplace in it. We used to call the martini room. She would set all of us kids up, either out here or I think even downstairs with TV and maybe pizza or something like that. She'd fix a separate meal for my folks, for her and my dad, and we could be sure that they would be up in the martini room with music going and dancing, the two of them, and kind of doing what they did during the service at officers' clubs and things like that as they were going through the service. So that's one of the many things I remember. We were here for the earthquake in '65. I don't know if that was actually, I've been told since, was an aftershock from the big Alaska earthquake, even though it happened almost a year later. We were in the house. My mother had plates everywhere, and all the plate rails, etc. I was in the house. My brothers and sisters had headed for school. I was in the house gathering waste baskets to get the garbage out, and I had them all lined up at the top of the stairs there. My mother was still in the house, and all of a sudden the house starts to shake. And I'm standing at the top of the stairs. The waste baskets, one by one, are starting to tumble down the stairs. I didn't know what to do. My mother runs around to the bottom of the stairs and is kind of looking up around the corner and yelling at me to stay up there, do not come down. And she's standing there and she can't go up. One of the reasons being is one of the many things we brought back from Germany, a very, very tall grandfather clock was on the landing. And it kept swinging out toward her. And I'm standing at the top of the stairs watching it swing back. She lost one plate off a plate rail in this house. Many of the chimneys went down in the neighborhood, but we didn't find any damage to the house. It went through the earthquake beautifully. And so that was definitely a memorable event.
These beams may have had anything to do with it?
The beams, and actually it was just the one beam here originally. The Hazes have added the two other support beams here, so it was just the center beam originally in here. But the house did perfectly well through that. Anyway, the house was full of music here. I'm a pianist, and my sisters used to sing, etc. I actually, and my mother's, this was her home, West Seattle. She attended Gatewood School, elementary school, which is where we all went.
Me too.
Years later. I actually took my first piano lessons from her piano lesson teacher, who was Sid Woody, a jazz pianist from the big band era. And so my family was very much West Seattle family. Last thing I wanted to mention, this was our first residential home. My grandmother, who was also longtime West Seattle family, J.B. George's, had a beautiful house down by the ferry dock down there. My grandfather died when she was very young. He was 40.
I think he was 54 actually.
54?
54, yes.
And he died in 53, right?
Yes.
She still, I believe, had a son at home. I'm not sure if Uncle Jerry was still at home.
Yep.
And of course she had a home and it was unexpected. She immediately went to, he was a real estate agent, worked for Clarence Czar in West Seattle. She immediately went to Clarence and said, I am a single woman, I have a kid still, and I have a home, I need a job. And they welcomed her in. She was, we believe, was the first real estate agent, female,
Real estate agent here.
in West Seattle. And she found the home for us as we were coming back from Germany. And anyway,